Kevin attends the herbalist contest with Professor Colt, sparking jealousy and ridicule from his peers. However, Dalton Steele intervenes, silencing the critics. What secrets is the mysterious woman in the VIP section hiding, and what does she want from Kevin?
Is that Kevin Williams, the outcast from the Williams family? Then she wondered, how could a like him be allowed to take part in such a serious competition? It's absolutely shameful. But since the contest was already in full swing and so many people were watching, this wasn't a good time to get even with Kevin. That would have to wait. Each of the contestants began choosing ingredients and starting fires so that they could refine their pills at just the right temperature. "Kevin, bring me those 2 ingredients over there." Professor Colt pointed at 2 containers as she started to adjust the flame under the large bronze pot. "Professor Colt, are you going to prepare the Metamorphosis Pill?" Kevin asked in a low voice after he handed her the materials. "Oh, have you heard of the Metamorphosis Pill?" Professor Colt's tone contained a hint of surprise. "I've read about it in an old book." Kevin was lying to her. In fact, not only did he know how to prepare the pill, but he also knew just how powerful the medicine was. It could make someone immediately jump an entire level of training. But there were 2 conditions that had to be strictly followed. First of all, it could only be used before someone had reached a certain level of development. And you could only take 1 pill in your entire lifetime. If you took more, it would have a reverse effect and you'd never be able to make any more progress for the rest of your life. That was very important to keep in mind. Kevin remembered reading that it wasn't a very advanced process, but it was good for someone who was still learning herbalism. Professor Colt didn't speak anymore. She just focused on controlling the flame under the big pot. All of a sudden, Kevin's nose twitched. He could smell that the medicine in the bowl was becoming extremely unstable. "Professor Colt, do you think that the temperature might be a little too high?" Kevin wrinkled his eyebrows as he reminded her to watch the flame. "It's okay. This is a very special recipe, and the ingredients need to be at a very high temperature or none of the chemicals can be extracted from them." Professor Colt smiled as she explained to Kevin what she was doing. "No, Professor, the medicine has already started to get unstable. You'd better turn down the heat a little bit." Kevin didn't agree with his teacher at all. He knew the temperature was getting too high. That's when Kevin realized something about Professor Colt. Although she definitely knew how to make herbal pills, she had a lot of trouble controlling the flame. Her techniques still hadn't been developed. "I said it's okay, Kevin. Don't worry about it." Professor Colt explained carefully what she was doing. "Maybe you've heard of the Metamorphosis Pill, but have you ever made one? Watch me closely and you may learn something." When he heard this, Kevin shook his head gently and thought to himself, "Professor Colt may be my teacher, but it's very clear that she is making a huge mistake. Her concoction is going to explode and we are going to be out of the competition. Since I need to keep my powerful knowledge a secret from her, I will let her make this mistake and then take over once her pill fails. Only I will have to throw in 1 extra ingredient when she isn't looking to stop the formula from exploding. That way, I will still be able to use the bowl to create my own pill." Just then, Kevin heard a muffled explosion after another from the other tables. As Professor Colt turned to look at their competitors, Kevin quickly dropped a vial of magnesium into the concoction and smiled to himself. The magnesium will help protect the bowl from Professor Colt's impending explosion. Just like Kevin predicted, after an hour and a half, suddenly Professor Colt's bowl made a dull popping sound. "How could that have happened?" Professor Colt's face suddenly turned pale. Kevin sighed. He'd been expecting this for a while now. "Professor Colt, I warned you that the temperature was getting too high. Luckily, the bowl is still solid and there wasn't an explosion." Kevin reassured her as cheerfully and optimistically as he could. "That's impossible. I've made metamorphosis pills several times in the past." Her eyes were full of disappointment. "I think it's because of the bowl and flame setup. You're used to having steel or ceramic containers, but they gave us bronze for this competition. Kevin explained carefully. You're right. You warned me about it before. I should have listened to you. What are we going to do now? Professor Colt looked around in a panic, especially when she saw that some of the other teams had already finished making their pills. Even though the herbalism competition is held every year, this was the first time Professor Colt had taken part in it, and she was really looking forward to doing well. If it ended in failure, she was certainly going to be very sad for a long time. Professor Colt, I have an idea. Why don't you let me make the pills instead of you? Kevin smiled and tried his best to sell her on the idea. In fact, he was also eager to have this opportunity to train. After all, the only way to make any progress was to practice. This would be a great chance for Kevin to hone his skills. Professor Colt was stunned at Kevin's suggestion and immediately began to struggle with the decision. Could Kevin really do it? The contest would be over in less than half an hour. Please, let me have a try, Professor. Since your concoction failed, you're a little psyched out right now. Even if you had another 2 hours, you probably wouldn't be able to do it. If I give it a try, we still have a glimmer of hope. Kevin knew that he could win this competition. He just had to convince her to give him a chance. Professor Colt wasn't sure what to do. Herbalism wasn't something to take lightly, and Kevin was just her assistant. She hoped to compete in other events in the future. What would they say if they knew she'd let her assistant take over? Besides, there was hardly any time left. Even if Kevin knew what he was doing, there are some things you just can't do in half an hour. But then Professor Colt thought of another problem. Kevin was right that she was freaked out. So even if he just made some basic pill, nothing fancy, that would still be better than a complete failure for their team. Well, come on, let's do it. Professor Colt finally decided and stepped back from the table so Kevin could step up and try to save them from a humiliating loss. This immediately attracted everyone's attention. The spectators in the VIP section definitely took notice. An assistant was taking the place of the main contestant? This was absolutely unheard of. As usual.
As the clock ticks down and the tension builds, one thing is certain: the outcome of the contest will be far from predictable. Will Kevin's risk pay off, or will it prove to be a costly mistake? Can he overcome the doubts and skepticism of the crowd and prove himself as a true herbalism master? And what secrets is Kevin hiding? Secrets that could either propel him to victory or sabotage his chances forever.
Please subscribe to the Pocket FM YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notification. Check out our channel for more such exciting shows.